Welcome to the Get Hooked podcast, companion piece for the 6-part documentary series exploring the health benefits of fishing and nature for everybody. This isn't your dad's fishing show. Today on the Get Hooked podcast, we're chatting with Christa Couture, national treasure, Canadian national treasure, award-winning performing and recording artist, nonfiction writer, and broadcaster. She's also proudly Indigenous, queer, disabled, and a mom. Disclaimer: fishing is obviously a very popular sport among men, but the world knows that. In this series, we're trying to shine a light on other humans' experiences with fishing and nature. That is not to leave men out of the conversation. No. To the men, we invite you to continue to make fishing and nature a safe space for anyone who has never seen themselves on the cover of a fishing magazine, and welcome. This episode of the Get Hooked podcast is produced by Bone Vault Inc. in association with AMI and OUTtv, and funded by the Bell Fund and Ontario Creates, and is hosted by actor, writer, and fishing-adjacent producer Heidi Lynch. That's me. Let's chat with Christa. Christa Couture, Canadian singer, songwriter, nonfiction writer, filmmaker, host of Postcards From on Accessible Media Inc. I've just been engrossed in your memoir for the last 48 hours, How to Lose Everything, for anyone who hasn't read it yet. It's beautiful. I've just had a real recent hard-on for Canadian creatives and artists. I think because of everything that's going on in the world, I am really craving CanCon. I think it's also because, who knows what's going to happen south of the border in terms of television and filmmaking going forward. But Canada right now has this incredible boom of diversity meeting merit, because those things are not mutually exclusive in the TV landscape, with shows like North of North out right now, which is just amazing. Yes. Yeah. And like growing up, having that feeling of turning the television on and being like, oh, this is Canadian.
It's incredible.
Like you just knew the Canadian cringe. And it's so cool to have shows like North of North and Sort of and Achievable Small Goals coming out. Show about menopause. Like Canada's financing and making these like amazing shows that make me really proud to be Canadian.
Yes.
And I was just curious, is there anything that you are super vibing at the moment in terms of Canadian musicians or books or television that you're really enjoying right now?
I feel the same, like just such a fondness and appreciation and like reverence for Canadian media, because we know what goes into it and it takes so much work and there's not a lot of resources, but these incredible stories are being told. I'm so excited about Meredith McNeil and Jen Whalen's new show. Like they're such geniuses. And when I heard a year ago or something, they were making a menopause show, as someone who is so fully perimenopausal, it's kicking my ass. I was can't wait for this show. So I think, did it just come out this week? Anyways,
yeah.
It's out and I haven't watched it. I love North of North. Like not only is it this like great story about someone kind of figuring themselves out, it's like weird and a bit surreal and it's funny and so Inuit. And books. I just was reading Zoe Whittall. I think she's just like cherished national treasure, our Zoe Whittall. There's so many artists, and I think you're right. Like when we were growing up, it was like Road to Avonlea, which I loved,
Love it.
But it was sort of the only one.
Yeah.
Or shows that were just really bad.
Yeah. The Canadian made-for-TV movie was just a special ilk
terrible.
of like, oh, that was filmed in Hamilton, and
yes, I feel like music and literature like has always kind of been solid, but for some reason, television for a while was not matching our skill.
Yeah.
But now it is. And yeah, it's so exciting. There's so many. I used to watch Canadian things just to be like, give them the streams, you know, be like, fine, I'll do my part. I'll watch your show.
Be supportive.
But now I'm so excited to see these shows. And it's such a good feeling.
The same. You are in the middle of filming season 6 of Postcards From. Are you able to tell me a little bit about the show for anyone who's not seen it?
Yeah. Postcards From is a travel show for the senses. That's the tagline, which also kind of gives us a bit of structure. Each episode has 5 segments. We go to a different Canadian destination in every episode, and then each segment focuses on a different sense. But that's not just like a gimmick as a way to tell the story. It helps us because we're like, oh, now we need a smell.
Yeah.
but it actually sort of brings in a less like explicit or heavy-handed way aspects of accessibility. So it's for AMI, like you and I are broadcaster buddies. Get Hooked is on AMI, Postcards From is on AMI. And so their primary audience is blind and partially sighted, right? And so as a sighted person, but a person with a disability, I feel like coming into experiences through the different senses helps remind us that there are multiple entry points into an experience, right? And as a sighted person, I rely pretty heavily on sight, but I've learned in doing this show, and there's times where I'm doing things with, blind or partially sighted guests, like my sense of hearing is not up to par compared to some other people's. And just, so there's like there's beautiful differences between the different ways we might enjoy an experience or understand an experience. And so the show is in that way about accessible travel, but again, in this way that's kind of like woven in that I really like, as not just someone who's part of the show, but even as someone who's if I were going to watch that, it's like more interesting. It's more about the story and less about sort of a educational accessibility.
Totally. I think it's different, but a lot of the content that I've made in the past has been labeled as queer content, has been full of queer stories. But it's that thing when Get Hooked is really intersects with disability and queerness in the storytelling and the representation on screen. But stories can contain a lot of queer representation, disability representation, and don't have to just be about that. You can see people living in the world. It doesn't have to be so didactic about that. And you can truly make these stories for everyone to be able to watch. And I think that's so interesting about the AMI approach with IDV. For anyone who doesn't know, it's a new Canadian technology. Instead of described video where they have this voice imposed on it who's not part of the world, there's a lot of extra work for Christa and I in the making of the show and the way things are audio described as they're happening, so that a blind and sighted person can watch the show together and fully enjoy it together. And it's been like really interesting to find that balance also, with not being too heavy-handed with the IDV. And like we have a blind angler in episode 2 that we go fishing with named Dave. And it's been amazing to get to share cuts with him along the way, and him to be like, I don't feel talked down to. I don't feel like it's over-explained. Like my wife and I are experiencing the episode together and we're really enjoying it.
Yeah.
I like that a lot about Postcards From. Like I know the intention behind it, and it's so cool as a creator to have that format and those guideposts that that you're following, but you don't feel that way when watching Postcards From. Like it washes over you in a really interesting way, and it does educate you and open your mind and enlighten you. But it really, like, I feel so much joy from the show as well. And I just like imagine the vibe on set and stuff. And obviously there's always issues with really ambitious travel. Like Get Hooked was crazy. Went to 6 different places. We filmed some episodes in one day, like the logistics of the travel, but the new energy of each space really gives the episodes a new energy too.
I lucked out, I guess, with Postcards, which is produced by Black Rhino Creative in Vancouver. And we film, like, on average, 1 episode a month. We film 2.5 days. So depending on where we are, I may be gone 3 nights or 4 nights, once maybe 5, because it was Dawson City from Toronto. But we don't have a grueling, like, 6-week long on the road. All of us have young children and other jobs. And so it's worked out really well to spread it out over about 8 months. But I wanted to say, like, that experience of IDV, because I feel like, when we hear the traditional described video, like you said, it's sort of this narration. She's wearing a blue baseball cap, and you're like, oh, God. And like, if you're as a sighted person, you hear that and you're like, oh, that's not for me. Or it takes you out of the story. Yeah. And I feel like IDV is sort of like the universal design of television. Yeah. Because I feel some people in my life who've watched the show and don't realize, they don't know about AMI. They don't realize the mandate for blind and partially sighted Canadians. And they didn't notice that I was being a little extra descriptive.
That's a win. That's a total
That's a
win.
win.
That's the goal, right?
It's a win.
Yeah.
Because I think that old school version it just takes you out of what's happening. But, and I've learned so much, about how to describe things or, talk about things through doing the show. I've loved that aspect of it. But yeah, our show, like, when I first met the crew and they were looking for a new host, they had Teresa Stashen for season 4, who's wonderful, but she couldn't do season 5, so they needed someone else. And you were chatting and just going to do a screen test. They came to Toronto. For me, I was like, if this is not a good hang, I'm out. I was like, I don't care how much they want to pay me. I don't care that I get to travel. It has to be a good hang. I am too old and too tired and too busy for it not to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially production, because it can be stressful and it is long days. And so it's just going to be tiring. So you want to be with people that you enjoy. And just from doing the screen test with them, I was like, oh, I like these guys. And so it's been a good hang. I feel so lucky that I met Black Rhino, we have one more episode to film for season 6. And it's just been a delight. I mean, what a gift of a job.
Yeah. It's interesting in the unscripted space too, which this is my first time working in unscripted for Get Hooked. But I pre-interviewed all of the guide anglers. So in each episode, there's an Ontario fishing guide who takes this queer group of friends fishing in Ontario. For 2 years, I interviewed these guides. And, you watched episode 3 with Frank Leaney.
Yes.
So I found him on a fishing face group chat, which primarily was all men. And I put a post in there and said, hey, I'm producing a new fishing documentary. I'd love to talk to any men who are comfortable speaking about their mental health on camera.
Okay.
And I wanted it for the show, but I also knew that message, anyone who responded to me, I would have weeded out people I didn't want to spend time with.
Yeah.
And Frank wrote me back and we had this Zoom and I just love the guy. He's
lovely.
It's this supermodel. These pictures of him when he's younger. My partner and all of my friends who are all queer women were all like, I think we all have crushes on Frank. And I was like, I know. He's so sweet.
Just a handsome fella.
Yeah.
He, just from what I saw in the episode, he's wonderful in it. And as myself, as a queer person from Alberta, I was like, oh, you and me, Frank. And that, he's done work in addictions. My dad did a lot of work in mental health and recovery for Indigenous men. And so I just his story really resonated with me. And I think that's what's so interesting and tricky and almost magical about unscripted is that you have to find actual real people who are interesting and generous and knowledgeable, or, you can't just hire the right actor to play the part. And it makes or breaks it, right? Who you find, these characters, for lack of a better word. I mean, they're real people.
Yeah.
But they're the ones really that make the story work, I think.
They really do. And as a producer, I did feel this real responsibility to these people, especially the ones who had never been on camera before, and had developed this trust with them over 2 years of chatting and sharing stories and finding what they felt comfortable talking to me about, and then just confirming with them again that they feel comfortable talking about that on camera.
Yeah.
And finding the balance of, people who are not actors, but who have an important story that they feel like they really want to share. And that they've done the work to be okay to share it at that time as well, I think is hard. And I just, the start of every day, we'd do a little chat and I'd say consent needs to be given. Consent can also be taken away at any point. If I don't care if it's halfway through the filming day, if you're feeling like, I can't do this today, please just tell me, because it goes against the whole point of Get Hooked is joy. It's about the mental health benefits of joy in fishing and nature. And if anyone's crossing a line into that not being what we're doing, let's just talk about it.
And that's so beautiful. I think production can sometimes demand or sort of pushes us against our mental health. And so that you were holding that as part of your intention and even making the series is so wonderful. I think in Postcards, similarly, like it's a show about accessible travel, and like I have to take breaks, I have to sit down, I sometimes have to lie down in the middle of the day, and it would be hypocritical to not like let me do that.
Yeah.
When we're like, look what accessible travel is. They're not going to sort of, grind me into the ground,
Yeah.
telling those stories. And so I worked in production for a long time on the production side. This is my first time on camera. I mean, I worked in radio and I'm a performer, whatever.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's different. That's a different way of doing things from 20 years ago when I was on set. And, it was just, you just have to get it done no matter kind of the toll it's taking on people. So I'm so
Yeah.
glad
And
to hear
almost
that.
like that badge of honor of like, I've worked myself into the ground. Like that seems to be fading away for some
Yeah.
productions, which is really good to see.
I think with Black Rhino, I'm very lucky that they'd already done, a season with Therese, who's a double amputee. And so they already had some knowledge of what it might look like. And they were very proactive and continue to be. With every episode, I get texts that's like, if you were milking a goat, what would you need? And I'm like, well, really, I guess a stool, and so we're just kind of in ongoing communication. Like the story producers will always run things past me. There's never been a thing that, like every episode, I always have had the option to say no to something, and I've tried not to. I've been pushed to my limits a lot on this series, and it's another way that's been a gift to me. I'm just like trying things I would never try. But sometimes, even though we have those conversations, we'll get out somewhere and then I realize in the moment, or I'm having like a bad leg day, or, some things can also be unpredictable for all of us with our bodies, right? But even as someone in a disabled body where I do have to spend a lot of time thinking and planning and managing my energy, and like today, is there any stairs? So if I do stairs in the morning, I'll need this in the afternoon, like all of that sort of thinking things through. And even with production where it's, really planned and researched, unexpected things still come up, like we planned this scene in a stock car, like a race car. And, okay, great. I'm going to get in the car, this and this and this. And none of us realized that the doors don't open on the cars. You have to climb through the window, which is something in the moment I was like, how am I going to get through the window? And we just hadn't planned for it because we didn't know and they didn't know to ask, does the door open? So, but I got in, it was fine. We got like little steps. I kind of climbed in, slowed, so I'm really lucky that the producers run everything past me as they're planning it and ask questions. And we've learned some things along the way. Now we always make sure the fixer just has like a chair close by, even if I'm the one who's like, I don't need a chair, I'll be fine. And now the producers know to be like, just bring the chair. She's going to want the chair. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, building in breaks. And even if we think, oh, it's just going to be 10 minutes while they fix a camera thing, it's like, no, always sit down whenever I can. And so it's a marathon, and like take breaks as much as possible, like proactively. So I think for me, like I'm lucky in this that I have a team that are doing a lot of that for me and anticipating it and doing the research. Like they're the ones, like you did, make phone calls and asking, all the questions. And then some of it we've just kind of learned as we go along. Like in the first season, I always had a backpack for my laptop. And then I was like, oh man, I'm in airports a lot. Like I finally bought a little carry-on with wheels, which is like not some fancy technology, but it made a really big difference for me to not carry a backpack anymore. And that's me in this body. And I still kind of had to do it a few times before I thought, you know what, there might be a better way to do this.
That's the nice part of getting to do multiple seasons too, because you get all that knowledge from the first time you did it and you get to go back. And then there's a new whole host of issues and problems that come up that you couldn't foresee because it's a new season. But that is really exciting. I wanted to turn a bit to, I just wanted to say, your memoir is so beautiful. And even reading the first 10 pages specifically, it just crystallized into words, these things that are not talked about. And there's about 3 women in my life that I was like, oh my God, they need to read this book. They've had a similar experience, and these crystal words are going to make them feel so seen. I just was curious if you had a moment in your life or your journey where grief or mental health moments or physical health moments were massive, and nature or travel gave you some sort of reprieve.
Mm. Yes. 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 So many moments. So yeah, I have this book, How to Lose Everything. That's about losses that I've experienced, and the most significant being the deaths of two of my children, and also the amputation of my leg and the end of my marriage. Losses, but honestly, next to the the babies, it's like divorce, but still heartbreaking, of course. But so, and so much of the work I do is about grief. Like my albums as a singer-songwriter, like they, I think, all exclusively about grief. This book, my films, which are, it's a series also called How to Lose Everything, which are was inspired by the book, like. And getting to the travel series and postcards, I mean, one of the things that's been such a joy about it, I was like, oh, it's not about loss.
Yeah.
That's not why I'm here. Like, I'm kind of a grief guy, and people call me and they ask me to talk about grief, and that's what I do. But postcards, I'm like, oh, I'm not here to talk about loss and grief. I'm here at this sort of other piece of the puzzle where I get to, experience joy, try things, be adventurous, which is kind of on the other side of the grief, but also a really important part of getting through all of it. I think there's so many moments um, of like shortly after my second son died, my ex-husband and I went to Hornby Island, and just every day, we were just in shock and stunned and so devastated and depleted, and just sitting on the beach and touching the rocks and listening to the water. I mean, nature just has such an incredible way of bringing us into our senses, to bring it back to the senses, bringing us into our bodies, making us feel small in a really good way,
Yeah.
making us feel part of things, making us feel like we're part of nature, reminding us that we're little squishy animals who need sun and water, and that's kind of it. Um, and sometimes that's even, I remember making like a note to myself that can also be found even just when I'm like, oh my God, just have a shower, but like pay attention to the water. Like if I can't get down to the lake or whatever, like what are other ways? Step outside and look up at the sky. When I've been, I've had years of very high anxiety and depression and, through these experiences because they were so traumatic. And any time that I went outside was always beneficial to just help bring it down a little, right? And help those racing, crazy making thoughts kind of hush and slow down. It's incredible. What I also think is incredible is how much we forget how impactful it is. We're so busy in our lives in the cities, and to just even living in the city in Toronto, to just go to the lake shore, just go into the ravine for an hour. Like it's so restorative.
It is.
And like what an easy fix in some ways, but I think we don't access it enough.
Yeah, or don't, it's in like episode 5 of Get Hooked is at Bowmanville Creek, which is about an hour from downtown Toronto, and accessible by transit and biking, and all of our anglers describe what you just described, that whatever they're dealing with, if it's work life stress, grief, addiction, the fishing slows everything down. Life becomes perfectly simple, and you're just so present and you're in one moment. Um, and a part of the show is just kind of trying to open up the fact that activity is not marketed to everyone. It's marketed to one specific member of society so much, and that there are all of these diverse, wonderful examples of people who love that as well. And to sort of like demystify, I mean, a lot of my friends, I'm a lefty urban filmmaker. A lot of my friends are like, fishing's mean to the fish, etc. Everyone's allowed to have their opinions, definitely. But the people that I've found over the course of this project, the people who are anglers, are so up to date about conservation, are so connected to the places that they're spending this time in. And, a lot of the angling and hunting community also, it's it's like these are people who are connecting with the land. You
Yeah.
know, there's people that are doing stuff in a disrespectful way everywhere, but the bulk of people who I've interviewed as a non-hunter, non-angler, uh, they really care. They really care
Yeah.
about the fish. They really care about the spaces that they're spending time on, and they are focused on how to give back to those spaces, not only taking from nature, but like how do we give back to say thank you?
Yeah.
Yeah, Petrie Island, where we filmed with Frank, is beautiful. It's a turtle conservation area. So they have the Friends of
Mm.
Petrie Island who are there to protect the turtles. And when we were going to film there, I had to meet with them. I had to walk around the whole perimeter of where we were filming. We had to talk through what was okay for the turtles and what was not. It was such a beautiful day. And I got to produce from a kayak all day. I was in a kayak all day. I was just so happy. Uh,
So beautiful.
yeah, yeah, it was great. It was really, really great. Can I ask a bit about how music is feeling at the moment for you? It's interesting because I love that you called yourself the grief guy, but I just find your charming energy on screen and your beautiful voice, even if the song is influenced by grief, you have such a lightness to your voice. It feels real joy. Like I feel real joy from listening to you
Mm.
sing and the music that you make. Um, Coming from you. And your memoir goes into you being a child and going through a lot of medical trauma and really, really an intense experience for a kid. But there's this real rambunctious spirit in the way you describe yourself, biking and playing with your friends. Do you ever feel like being the grief guy has informed your joy? Like has clarified that joy for you in a way? You know that the dark makes the light light, essentially.
Absolutely. Yes. I think also there's a connection for me to like capacity. So it has been necessary for me to have quite a large capacity for grief. And we all experience grief and it's very universal. And I have happened to have some kind of extraordinary experiences in my life. For my social location, for like a white passing cis person in a major city in Canada, right? Like, so some of the things that have happened to me are quite exceptional considering my circumstance. But I think that capacity that I've had to grow and have for grief, I think sort of concurrently increases a capacity for joy. And that's not to say that people who aren't traumatized don't experience joy, but for me, there's just something in the scale. And I think having been through the experiences I've been through, like the loss of my leg and the loss of my children and other things, has like made joy such reprieve and has made it in some ways hard won. Like joy is abundant and it's around us, but I also had to like do a lot of work to be able to reach for it and accept it and feel it and not feel guilty about it. And I think I also learned that coming from Indigenous community. I mean, we see that there too. My dad always said Indians know how to pray and they know how to laugh. And it sort of speaks to me sort of the capacity for things. And I think, so many comedians, it's because they've gone through like the hardest times. I think humor and music are these ways that we transmute our pain. And so I love that you get that from me, that you feel a lightness or you feel a joy through watching the show or in my music. I think in my music, and this is in the book, but my traditional name as a Cree person is Saini Bay, which means singing woman. And when I was given that name, I was like 2 or something. And the story was that the elder told my family she's going to sing a lot and she's going to talk a lot. And that was always how I was described. Like, oh, Christa, she sings a lot and talks a lot. And singing was just like, it's what I do. It's who I am. And our traditional name speaks to, our almost our to our role in our community. So it's like that's what I do. It's how one of the main ways I contribute. Now that I'm doing less music, and I kind of grappled because I was like, but I'm singing, woman, and now I'm not singing. I'm hosting a travel show. How does that fit in? But it's the talking. I think I've sort of started to take the like she talks a lot part of that teaching to be like, my role is actually storytelling and connecting with people and opening up my little sad, joyful heart so that people can open up their little sad, joyful hearts and we can just be in a thing for a minute together. Yeah. And that's what music was for so long, being on a stage and singing and just looking for that reciprocal, like, do you get what I'm saying? Okay, thank God. You feel it. I feel it. We just being less alone, this kind of human drive to feel seen and heard and feel less alone. And so I think through music, there's a lot of pieces into it. It's just what I do. It's what I'm moved to do. And it was for so long how I expressed my own experiences. I mean, I think a lot of the stories in the book are in the songs, but because the songs are 3.5 minutes and they're in rhyming couplets and you can kind of be poetic or vague and maybe no one knows what you're talking about, which was partly what drove the book. So I was like, I think I want to say some of these things explicitly with more words and with like more clarity. But I haven't, like my last recording came out in 2020. I released a single maybe 2 years ago. I haven't been making music, and some of that, there was like an intentional shift when I decided to have my daughter, and I had a vocal injury that's mostly recovered, but I was like, wow, okay, so I can't sing for a while. I want to try and have another baby. I guess and that led to the book and the films and these other things. But I've just recently been starting to feel like music is kind of bubbling up again. So I think there will be more. I don't know exactly yet what it will be, but I don't think I'll tour again. That's a hard job. But I would love to record and do some performing again.
Cool.
Yeah.
Glad to hear it. Fangirl over here. I've just gotten to a part in your book where you're with your sweetheart, and then there was a she, and then I was excited. But the point of it was you needing to explain to her ongoing medical appointments that are just part of your normal, that might not be part of other people's normal. And I'm excited to keep going into that because I am just in the middle of, I'm much better at it now, but wrapping my head around some fun chronic illness medical conditions that just mean I have to go to the hospital every 3 months and have to try to combine that with production and hearing the words pre-cancer. And, it's for a while, it really just rocked me. It put me in this place of inertia where I was like, I can't ever make anything ever again. I have to wait by my phone for 3 months until they call and tell me to go to the hospital again. I think, which is part of ADHD, this hyper focus overwhelm. But I was just curious, have you felt over your journey, because your journey with cancer happened when you were really young, have you found that, like, does it stop you in your tracks? Do ongoing medical checks stop you in your tracks anymore? Or is it so, like, are you above it? Is it so part of your normal that it's like, well, this is when I go do this thing?
Yes and no. I think exactly because I was 11 when I first got cancer. I was 13 when my leg was amputated. It set my life on a different course, but I was a child. And so I didn't have a sense really of where I might have been going anyways. I think the people around me did. The adults in my life certainly were like, oh, her life will not be this way. And now we don't know where it's going. But, and so, yeah, I think I am very used to it. It is just part of my life. And even though that cancer was over 30 years ago, I still have appointments. I still have, long-term follow-up things. And then I had thyroid cancer in 2016. And so there's follow-up and things with that as well. But I noticed that I sort of like, okay, I'm used to all of that medical stuff. I'm pretty okay with what my physical limitations are. But if anything new gets introduced, like some other new illness or injury, I'm so pissed off. I'm just like, absolutely not. I hate this. I hate my life. Why am I so unlucky? Like, it's just like, and then I go through it and I'm fine, you know, but
it just tips it over into like, what the fuck? And then you reacclimate. Yeah.
So I think my acceptance is a bit fragile.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just part of my life. But I think when I've, like with partners or when I'm close to people who don't have a medicalized life, I'm sort of like, wow, what do you do with your time? If you're not sitting in hospital.
If you're not doing 20 hours of medical admin a year, what are you doing with those hours? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's not for me now so much. It's like a hobby. But for some people, it's kind of a part-time job or even more to manage your health. Like when you're like actively dealing with treatment or, and ongoing issues, it's a lot of time and energy. And so it isn't too much for me now. It will just always kind of be there. But I hear you on the time it takes to make that change. And maybe the first time you did have to just sit by your phone for 3 months. And maybe the next time you only did that for a few weeks. Like you just sort of slowly, I think integration is slow.
Yeah.
And aging is a disabling event. Like we're all slowly, our bodies are changing and need more time or all of that. Yeah. So, but yeah, I think it's a process to get used to it. Hey,
it's just smooth like a rock. You get smoother and smoother as you go. Yes.
That's right.
Okay, great. Well, I think this has been an amazing conversation, and I just want to thank you for your Canadian art.
Oh, same.
And that
Thank
Canada
you.
gets to claim you. I just feel really proud of that. And I'm really looking forward to finishing your book.
Wonderful. I mean, well, we're in it together. We're in this Canadian landscape together. So look at us go. But thank you so much.
Awesome. And do you know when we get to see Postcards From season 6 yet? Do you guys have a release date or not yet?
We don't have a date. Last I heard was April, but season 5 is on AMI Plus, and I'm sure that's where Get Hooked is too. And so yeah, it's out there.
Thank you, Christa. You can check out the documentary series Get Hooked in Canada, AMI-tv, AMI Plus, and on OUTtv.com in Canada, the US, Australia, and New Zealand. You can get those through Apple TV and Amazon Prime. On OUTflix.com in the UK and Ireland, and on OUTflix via Allente in Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and Finland. Lastly, fish on, shoot on, or tree on. Whatever you do to get your nature kicks, just get outside and enjoy it. Thanks.